Good morning. You're listening to Central Wisconsin's 24-hour information station, AM 1320 WFHR. It's time now for the Morning Magazine, brought to you by Comfort Air Heating, Cooling, Plumbing. Now, with the Morning Magazine, here's Carl Hilke.
Thank you, Jerry, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's show on AM 1320 and streaming live at WFHR.com. We also welcome our friends from Wisconsin Rapids Community Media. The reason they're here, Wood County Sheriff Thomas Reichert is here for the entire hour. We'll be taking your phone calls and talking about a bunch of things, and we even have a little giveaway for a couple of callers this morning. But the sheriff has brought along another key member of the Sheriff's Department team, and I'll let him do the introduction. And welcome, sir.
Well, thank you. Well, we appreciate being here. You're really appropriate. There's probably no more key member of my senior administrative staff than our guest today. It's a gentleman who's been with me since 2010 in his present capacity, and has worked at the Sheriff's Department since around 2000, I believe, and has done just basically everything that I have ever wanted a chief deputy to do. And he is like, I couldn't make a better chief deputy if I could start from scratch. And of course, I'm talking about Randy Dorhorst. He's just been the best. And we've had a great team, and we've done some, I think, pretty amazing things in government these last 7 years, and it's just been a pleasure working with him.
When people hear the term chief deputy, what does that entail?
Well, we formerly had a position called undersheriff,
right?
And for basically the one of the biggest differences is the undersheriff essentially was like the sheriff's vice president, and would, although their name wasn't listed on the ballot, would really stand for election with the sheriff. So if the sheriff would lose an election, the undersheriff would be gone also. The chief deputy position does many of the same functions that the undersheriff did, depending on how the sitting sheriff decides to structure the position. However, it provides continuity from administration to administration as they're not bound to the sheriff during an election year.
Okay.
So they would stay. For instance, if I ran for re-election and lost, Randy would remain as chief deputy and go into the next administration. So it really, the biggest difference that I see is that it provides some continuity to the department. Quite frankly, I wasn't a huge fan of switching back in 2009 or 2010 when we switched, but ultimately I've grown to appreciate the position considerably more, and it's worked out very well for us.
Yeah, I can see the historical continuity to have someone with the department that can say, okay, if there were a new sheriff, here's how things have been going.
Right, and you theoretically could have someone out of law enforcement become sheriff. There's nothing that says that someone that is working in some other capacity outside law enforcement can't run for sheriff. So in the previous system, you could have someone that was not a law enforcement officer run for sheriff, and if he or she would have chosen to do it, could pick another outsider to law enforcement, and then you would have had literally no continuity. But that never happened.
Yeah.
It was I know in some counties there were cases where and generally it ended up being like someone that owned a bar would run for sheriff, and
right.
And many times people that own bars are very popular people area wide, and there have been cases where those individuals have won the office of sheriff in their counties, and that presents a whole different wealth of issues that we could talk about, but never has happened here. I think with the implementation of the chief deputy position back in 2010, I think there'll always be continuity in our approach.
And now, talking before the start of the show, you said Randy's been busy with the budget.
He has been. He has really mastered our budget, to be honest with you. I sometimes think that the the finance folks come and ask Randy questions about the budget rather than the other way around. So we're kind of wrapping up now a very successful budget season, and I thought this would be a most appropriate time for him to come on the show.
Okay, what are the highlights of the Sheriff's Department budget?
Well, every year it's a little bit more challenging, and I think every year we have to analyze put our priorities in the department and where we're going to, put our finances towards. I mean, obviously there's things we need. We have to want. We have obligations to the citizens, and we have to address those things first, and also our state mandates, what we're required to do, and putting it all together each year, we have to get a little bit more strategic on where we're going to place our money. And we've all, Sheriff Reichert and I went through, since I've worked with him as in my capacity, initially went through every little bitty piece of that department and analyzed it and found a better way to do things. I mean, what our jail was before Sheriff Reichert took office is just, it's like 180 on how we do business there and how we better save money and take all them things and put them in one big pile, and that's how we kind of get our budget together.
Okay. Now, so what are some of the key elements in this year's budget, or different ways you're doing stuff, or implementation of maybe new initiatives? The sheriff was here. He's been talking about the expansion of the monitoring program to folks who, prior to trial and the like.
That is that electronic monitoring program that Sheriff Reichert put together back in, I'd say about 2007.
Yeah, it was way back in
Wow.
already.
That has it's made the budget process easier, if I should put it that way, but the amount of money that had saved the taxpayers over the amount of years he was in office is just unbelievable. Every year, the electronic monitoring essentially balances our budget. We have shortfalls here and there, but we always have that EMP that covers it. In one given year, that EMP produce anywhere from $200,000 to $300,000 just to takes from the taxpayers. We don't have to take from the taxpayers to balance the budget, and that EMP makes the budgeting process a little bit easier because it essentially supports the jail and the whole sheriff's department and just the money it's saved.
Okay, so that's been a key part. Anything in particular with the current budget, or the budget that you've put together for this year that's new? Or is this basically a continuation of?
It's kind of a continuation, and each year you have to move things around a little bit because every year things are a little bit different. We might, like our jail population is up this year, and next year it might go down, or vice versa, go up more. So each year we have to, we get so much tax revenue, and we have to put that towards specific things. So it's just like a little bean game, moving things around and where we put emphasis on. And so it changes. I guess it's kind of an evolving thing where you keep, building on what you have, and you try to come in every year at like a 0% increase because we're all taxpayers, not only, the people we serve, but I am as well. And we want to do what we can to make it easier for taxpayers.
A lot of what we've done, Carl, is to implement programs that we need to consistently keep in place. And probably the one that people see most often and would probably identify with most is what we do with squad cars. Mm-hmm. Several years ago we switched over. Randy and I had sat down. We kind of analyzed the situation, looked at what cars were available, and we determined, and I think generally with tremendous success, that a larger vehicle was going to be better for county law enforcement due to the amount of equipment we have to have, the distance that we have from the courthouse to perhaps a crime scene or a crash scene. A lot of times what folks don't think about is, let's say in Wisconsin Rapids, if they have a crash somewhere downtown, they could run very, very easily. Someone could run to the to City Hall, grab equipment or whatever else they would need, and be able to get back within a matter of just minutes, literally. We might be 35 miles away from where the crash happens. So we need to really stock our cars probably a little bit differently than what a municipal PD does. So what we did, we sat down, we kind of kicked it around. We found that the Chevy Tahoe was probably the right vehicle for our purposes. And we committed to turning our fleet over to Chevy Tahoes. Now, and Randy can talk a little bit more about the specifics of this if you choose to, but we limit the miles that are on it, and we try to have a regular rotation of vehicles to avoid high maintenance costs on the back end of the life of the vehicle. And so every year we buy generally from 3 to 6 new Chevy Tahoes to replace ones that are aging in the fleet. And this year I believe we bought 6.
6, yeah.
How many total do you have in the fleet?
30.
Oh, okay.
And we try to make a rotation process. Shortly after Sheriff Reichert became sheriff, we did a big cost analysis, cost study on the cost of what it cost per year to run a vehicle, right down to every single thing we put into that vehicle. We did a cost analysis. It was a pretty in-depth study on it to determine what it cost per vehicle, what it cost per vehicle if we had each individual officer have a car versus sharing cars, the best use of them, because if you're sharing cars, they would have to commute in. The car's not all available if you have a problem. If there's a problem in north end of the county and we need to get officers out there, that's a factor in there too. We have to have cars available all over the county. We did this whole study, and it was found just significantly to the advantage of having per car per man. So then the next thing we have to study is what is the best kind of car to buy. Well, when you're looking at a Chevy Tahoe, you have a truck body. You have more longevity. It's a better way to play in layperson's terms. It's a stronger vehicle. You get more miles out of them. We've been running them up to 180,000 miles with little problems, and I mean they're safe cars yet. All those little things help versus you get the smaller ones. Well, you don't get the longevity out of them. Now you have to take what that car cost. Up front, there's a little bit more, but equipment can transfer over. And if you leave them in for a period of time, even though they change equipment and change different things, you're using that equipment till it's actually worn out before you're switching it over.
Okay.
Well, it was kind of neat. I think Randy probably remembers this. When we first started doing this, we had really a different array of cars. We had some Chevys, we had some Fords, we had some different things, and maintenance costs on some of these were just going crazy. Literally when we decided we had to do this study, some of those Chevys, I think we were doing brake jobs every 3 weeks.
Oh yeah,
Wow.
wheel bearings.
It was crazy, and our maintenance costs were just eating us up, and it wasn't that we had, we basically had like a fleet of mostly broken down cars. We had a system where 2 or 3 people shared vehicles, and depending on what shift was working. So these cars were being run really hard. They were being run basically into the ground. And the maintenance and just the day-to-day things, even, like brakes, oil change, lube, those type of things, just the numbers were just crazy. And, now we're at a point, like Randy had said, we're driving these vehicles 180,000 miles, and we're not seeing like the amount of everyday or occasional maintenance that we did in the past. And it's really working out well for us, and it's really put us on the floor in terms of budget costs.
And those vehicles are much more appropriate with the size of this county, the rural and between the two municipal areas, metro areas of this county, Marshfield and Wisconsin Rapids. You got a lot of country, and with the winter weather that we have, I mean,
for sure. And it took us a while to get there for car per man on our road crew. It wasn't just that we decided, and we made the budget choice that we weren't one year going to go in and ask the county board to buy 12 brand new cars. So we rotated the cars, and one year we'd pick up a car, the next year we'd pick up another one because the cars were lasting a little bit longer. And now, just within the last 2 or 3 years, we've gotten to the point where every road deputy has a car that is exclusively assigned to them. So if we would have a situation now where we would see one car that has more repairs having to be done for it, it's probably because of user error. We haven't had that because everyone, I think, takes far greater ownership and pride in their car and takes care of it much better than what they did when they were maybe sharing it with 2 or 3 people. So, we didn't get there overnight. It took us a while to get to the point where we have 30 nice shaped vehicles that are running well and that are serving the people. And one of the side benefits to it, and I always likened it to having a big dog in your yard.
Okay.
I think that a lot of times, a lot of neighbors of people that or that live by the deputies that have the cars, the car is sitting in their driveway for a period of time each day because they bring it home. That's a very reassuring sight for many, many folks in Wood County to have a deputy sheriff living in their neighborhood and having that car there just as a law enforcement presence.
Okay. We're going to get into phone calls in just a little bit, but I'd be remiss if I didn't ask for your thoughts about everything we've seen happening over the last few days with the horrible tragedy in Las Vegas, and especially from a law enforcement view. When you see that, I'm sure you look at it something like that from a different perspective than I would because of your law enforcement background. So I'd be interested in your take.
And my guess is that my take is probably very similar to 90 to 95% of the people that are listening right now, and to the extent of that being a huge tragedy, and to the extent of, you have to. I still haven't heard the whys of this. You wish when someone would do something like this that they would be courteous enough to write a letter or something and say, I'm doing this because I didn't like
a manifesto.
A manifesto, exactly. That doesn't seem to be the case in this, and I think we're left to wonder what prompted this. My second thought is, it occurred in an area of Las Vegas that both Randy and I are very familiar with. It's an area where Missy and I got married. And Randy was with us when that happened. So it's an area that's very familiar to us because we all like, vacationing or taking weekend trips to Las Vegas occasionally. So it hits very close to home. The overwhelming thing is the senselessness of it. We repeatedly have this. This is just the most recent episode of it. If you had to ask me, what's better or worse, this or some of the school tragedies that happened, I don't know what I would answer. I'd probably say the school tragedies. But
what should we? Maybe a better question would be, what should we as civilians learn from this? What advice as a law enforcement professional do you have for? Because that's one thing that's been talked about. People being afraid now to attend a large event with towering buildings because what kind of lessons can we take from this?
I don't know what lessons you can take from it. I'm certainly not going to suggest being paranoid about it. I don't think that we can live our lives paralyzed by the fact that if we walk in a major metropolitan area or go to a concert or to a football game or to some other event that we should be like sitting on pins and needles for fear that some whacked out person is in the crowd. Certainly, at minimum, I would say make an appraisal of what you're doing. Always be cognizant of the things that are happening around you. I stop short of saying always have an escape route. Do we have to live that way? That's goofy. I don't think that we should. I don't think that when we go to a Packer game that we should worry about something happening. You know, a long, long time ago, I read a book by a fellow by the name of Anthony Lake, who was national security advisor to President Clinton in the 90s. And he had always talked about, you know, how are terrorists going to hit America? And what basically boiled down what his point was is that it's going to happen if terrorists really thought about this, the smart way to do it would be to attack everyday life in America. You know, and some of the things being like putting something into the air conditioning or the air unit of a basketball arena, or having a person having a suicide bomb type thing fly a plane into the grandstand on a Friday night football game. You know, and he spoke about all of these sort of everyday sort of occurrences, which are a bit different, but fairly similar to what happened in Vegas. Maybe not in size, in scope, but certainly in scope, but not in size. So the overwhelming idea from this is, how do you prepare for this? And there isn't really a great answer for that. Particularly, you know, like, what are you going to do if A happens? You know, I guess, you know, my advice would be to suggest to people to make an appraisal, but there was no reason to think that some goofy guy was going to open up shooting from Mandalay Bay into that concert. There's no rhyme or reason to it.
Well, yeah, they said this gentleman he was not on any watch list. There was no, I mean, they say that's the thing that makes it tough for law enforcement. Here's a lone wolf.
You couldn't even really profile this guy. You know, the guy's 64 years old, white. You know, there's no even profiling aspects of him don't really apply. The whole incident itself just doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
We got to take our first break, and I got a caller on. I want you to stay on the line, caller, because you're going to be the first caller after the break. You're listening to The Morning Magazine on AM 1320 and WFHR.com. As always, it's brought to you by Comfort Air.
Good morning, and welcome back to The Morning Magazine, presented by Comfort Air Heating, Cooling, Plumbing. It's time for part 2. Once again, here's Carl Hilke.
Thank you, Jerry, and welcome back, everybody, to today's show on AM 1320 and WFHR.com. We also welcome our friends from Wisconsin Rapids Community Media. Wisconsin Wood County Sheriff Thomas Reichert is here, as well as Chief Deputy Randy Dorhorst, and we have a caller who's been very patient, gentlemen, on the line. So thank you for being patient, caller. I'm going to give you the floor. Your question or comment for the sheriff and the chief deputy.
Yes, thank you for taking my call. What I'm calling about is a different subject. I almost was scammed last Wednesday, and it was supposed to be my grandson who went to a funeral for a friend that died in a car accident. And then while he was after the funeral, a stranger asked him to go with his car to take him to the cemetery. And so he said he got in the car with a guy, and while he was driving my grandson to the cemetery, the cops pulled him over because he was texting on his cell phone. And then he said they made us get out of the car. And then he said when they checked the car in the trunk, there was a large amount of drugs. So he said that he needed money for bond. And I was so sure it was his voice that otherwise I don't think I would have fallen for it, because my husband worked as a policeman in Wisconsin Rapids for 29 years, so I thought I was above this. But his voice was so much like my grandson. And then he said, please, Grandma, don't tell anybody. But I only have this one call. But he said, the officer wants to talk to you. But he said there will be a pause. So then there was a pause, maybe about 5 seconds. And then this officer spoke to me, and he said, yes, your grandson is cooperating with us. And we know that he doesn't have drugs because we took his blood. But we need $7,500. And we need it in cash because being this is narcotics division, they don't take any checks or money orders.
And where did they claim to be from?
Well, they kind of, after I thought about this, Carl, they kind of felt me out because I said, where are you? And he said, the city. And he didn't say what city, but then I know my grandson lives in Minneapolis. So I said, Minneapolis? He said, yeah, Minneapolis. So they were fishing, for answers. And so anyhow, he said, I said to him, to the officer, I said, if I go to the bank, they're going to ask me for that amount of cash, what it's for. And he said, well, why don't you just tell them that you're redoing your basement? And I said, no. I said,
nice.
At the bank, I said, they know me just like family. And I said, I'm too old. They know I'm too old to refinish my basement. And then he said, well, why don't you tell them that you need a new furnace because you need a furnace in Wisconsin?
Our two professionals here, ma'am, are both smiling and nodding their heads. This is one of the oldest scams, is it not, gentlemen?
Yes, it is. We've had a...
Well, anyhow, I live in Nakusa, and I told him that he wanted me to get the money, and they were going to come to my house to pick it up. They weren't going to have me send it. They were going to come to my home. So he said he wanted me to get the money and then come back and then give him a call. And then before I made the call, I called my friend that works at Wood Trust. I know her. Yeah. She's such a sweet lady.
Oh, yeah.
And so anyhow, I asked the bank if she was working that day, and they said, yeah, she is. So I went there, and she said, how are you? And I said, not very good. And I told her this story, and she said, that's a scam. She said it was almost the same story that they gave my mother a month ago, and it was her grandson, too, not my two boys, but her other grandson.
You never gave them the money, right?
No.
Okay, good.
But why I am calling, Carl, I want this on the news to warn other women.
Well, this has been on the news, ma'am, quite a bit. In fact, we've talked about it, and I'm going to let these guys talk about it. But listen, you were such a sweetheart for staying on the line, and the sheriff has why don't you describe this?
It's a challenge coin. That commemorates my time as sheriff.
Yeah, we're going to give you one of these coins, dear, for going through all that hassle.
Yeah, you went through a lot for that.
I will tell you that a sheriff came to the bank, and he looked up that number, Carl, and it was from British Columbia.
Yeah, it's always out of
and
the
so
country.
then I knew it was a scam.
Okay, what's your name?
The trouble is, when I got home, the phone just kept on ringing and ringing, and rang for over an hour.
You did the right thing by not answering.
Good job.
Yeah, that's what he made me promise. He said, please never just pick up your phone. He said, let it ring. He said, if somebody really wants to talk to you, they'll put it in your answering machine. So I'd like to let the people know. Let it go to your answering machine.
What's your first name, ma'am?
Ruth.
Ruth, listen, we're going to have one of these coins at the station whenever you want to. You stop by and you can pick it up, a gift from the sheriff. And thank you for your story. And it's one that we've talked about on the air. You're not the only one.
No, you're not alone. That's for sure.
Well, that's good. I'm good that I wasn't so stupid.
Oh,
I mean,
actually, great job.
They didn't scam me money-wise, but emotionally they do.
Mm-hmm. No, it makes you feel kind of violated.
If you feel violated and you feel like my blood pressure is up.
Oh, I bet. Well, good job though in not doing it.
Thank you for this program.
You're very welcome.
You're very welcome, and good luck to you. And be careful.
Oh, okay. Bye.
Bye. No, and these guys are sophisticated.
That's pretty good.
I mean, they go.
It's an old one, but it sounds like they did it pretty good.
Yeah, and older folks will think it's
Yep.
Or they'll get something in the mail. Mm-hmm. Well, my sister got something in the mail. I told her, that is not legitimate. Mm-hmm. It's not from the government. It looks like it's from that's a scam. The government doesn't send out mailings.
No. A lot of people have legitimate jobs out there. That's what they consider their legitimate job, and that's scamming other people.
Yeah.
So, it was a very nice way it was handled. Remember, we're always a telephone call away. If there's any, something doesn't seem right, or you question something, you can always call us and we will help you through that. I've had similar situation happen to an elderly relative who, by the time they got done with the conversation, had her checkbook ID number or the account number and social security number. And we don't give those things over the phone. They don't call us for them. You just got to remember that.
Yeah, the folks or if someone calls and says, "Hi, I'm Randy Dorhurst from the Wood County Sheriff's Department," hang up and then call up the Sheriff's Department. Because if Randy was trying to call,
and by no means, whatever it says on that caller ID, because 90% of people have caller ID. What it says in that caller ID means nothing.
No,
what they do is they call it spoofing. They can come across in that caller ID what they want to come across in that caller ID.
Yeah, and then people see that and they think they're dealing with a legitimate agency, and it's from British Columbia, Canada.
Unfortunately, this happens probably every day. In our county, there's at least. This happens so very often, and I think it's a great thing. Very, very few people are scammed now because of this. A lot of people try, but we're doing, I think, pretty good in terms of doing shows like this and educating people as to the, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is, or, like in the case of Ruth's story, there were terrific holes in their story, such as fishing for where they're from and
yeah, they didn't. Well, from the city. Well, what city? If they're not telling you, a law enforcement professional would have the name of the badge number, and if you said, "Listen, I'm going to hang up and call back to talk to you," they would, you could call the sheriff's department and find out a legitimate.
Just one little. Caveat here is when they can call you and give you part of your account number and then go on and give you some other numbers and you question them and say, "No, that's not correct. These numbers are turned around." They now have your number. I mean, this is all they do. So you should never give any of this stuff over the phone.
Never any kind of information over the phone. Oh, you broke my headset. I'll snap that in for you.
Actually, there's a wire broken.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll get Chuck to work on it then. Chuck has a project this afternoon. Well, we got another caller, and since they're the second caller, they'll get the second coin. Okay, you're on the air with the sheriff and the chief deputy.
Good morning. I had a good one about 4 calls in a row. I knew the first 3 numbers was our 457, and the other 4 numbers I didn't recognize who they were. So I called them back, and I got a recording that the number was no longer in use.
What was?
And I called up the telephone company, and they said people randomly do numbers and call people. So they're all scams.
Yeah, if you ever, another little, for you who have computers at home, you can easily Google that number, and they have a little list up there which actually tells you.
See, I didn't recognize, I knew they were 457 like what we have, but I didn't recognize any of the 4 last numbers as.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, they'll try everything. What's your first name, dear?
No, I don't want.
Okay.
You can give it to someone else because I don't live close by.
Okay.
So take another caller. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for calling.
Yeah, boy. So, like you said, it's going on all over the place.
It is. It's just, it's a very commonplace event now that you receive something in the mail, or you receive a phone call, or whatever other approach that the scammers might take. We're not seeing nearly as many successful scammers as what we have in the past. Not to say that some don't, and there might be some cases where people are embarrassed after they get scammed that they won't report it to us too. But by and large, though, I think that folks are doing a great job on avoiding the scams that people are throwing out there.
Okay, why don't we get this caller in, and before we have to take our next break, you're on the air.
Yeah, good morning, Carl.
Hey, Gary.
Hey, talking about these scams, the new TV format now with Charter comes out, when the phone rings, the telephone number He's right on top of the screen, so you know who's calling.
Okay. Yeah.
I get a report from Jamaica.
Well, that's helpful. Certainly, if it's from a country outside our borders, that's your first sign that the scam is on.
Yeah, if you're getting a call from Jamaica and you
That's
don't
not
know
a good
anybody, you don't know anybody from Jamaica, and you didn't register for a Jamaican vacation. That's a. Hey, Gary, you want one of these? One of these coins?
Yeah, where do I pick it up?
Yeah, just at the station here, my friend.
Already, I got a lot of time today.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you take care, my friend.
Alrighty.
Bye.
Thanks for calling, Gary.
With that, we'll take our break. Speaking of police officers, we have a very special event, and I know some Wood County Sheriff's Department officers and members of the department are involved with it. You're going to hear about it right now. And welcome back to the caller. Hang in there. You're next. Welcome back to the Morning Magazine. So, Sheriff, I know the sheriff. The Sheriff's Department is one of the agencies that's going to be involved with. Quite a few agencies in this area are going to be involved with Run with the Cops.
I think almost all of them are,
Yeah.
actually. It's tomorrow night's going to be a busy night. I know the Family Center is having
Their event.
and Run with the Cops is going to happen, so it's a good night to be out and about.
Okay. We got to get to our next caller, and you're on the Morning Magazine with the Sheriff and Chief Deputy.
Hi, Carl. Could I have a quick word with Sheriff Reichert?
Yeah, he's on right now. Why don't you go ahead? Talk to him.
Okay. Yeah, Sheriff, could you call me after you get out of this show? I don't want this on the air.
Sure.
And I think you'll probably know what the situation is. But yeah, if you would call me at, prepare to copy.
Yep, I am.
Okay, 715-721-6066.
Okay.
He'll give you a call.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And
You're
you do
welcome.
a great job.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye. Yeah. People, you hear that? You wouldn't believe the work James and I put into that production. I had my laptop, and we were doing the writing, and Chuck Gennaro was helping us with some of the engineering, and I think we were in that studio for well over an hour working on for what you heard.
Well, it sounds great, though.
Yeah.
It sounds great, though.
So we're happy to do it, and we urge you to, if nothing else, let's show up prior to the race start and meet the officers and see the equipment. Your tax dollars pays for it.
That's absolutely true. And meet the canine.
Meet the canine.
It'll be a very nice event for folks.
Yeah.
Hopefully the weather will be good.
Yeah, that's the big thing. So we're budget time. We've been talking about scams, and I guess what other we're getting to that time of year too, where I guess maybe now is a good time in October to make sure your vehicle is winter ready, instead of waiting until there's some sleet or freezing rain or snow, and now's the time to go.
Especially if you take it to a shop. I mean, it's everybody else waits to the last minute. You should probably be looking ahead of that, and just some basic things. You know, your battery and your antifreeze isn't gonna, it's good enough for 35 below, and all those other little things, and to put the winter air in your tires.
I just got a thing too from the state. They're talking about, hey, now's the time to put together your winter survival kit in your vehicle.
Great advice. I know you've always been a huge proponent of that, and of educating people in that regard. And I share your feelings on it. That put together a kit, with your cell phone, some extra clothes, some water, extra items that you can have in case of flares, other road triangles, anything that would help in case you would get in a crash or have some sort of mishap while you're traveling. That first snowfall is always the most painful. We always have a ton of accidents or crashes on that day, and as people get their winter driving skills back in order, it's something to be very cognizant of. And I think that the overriding message of that is, if it's snowing or if the roads are slippery, just slow down. It's that simple. You make sure that you have plenty of room between you so that you're not barreling into the back of the car ahead of you.
Or even in rainy conditions, like we have that deluge that hit last night here in the city. I mean, you have to slow down. Otherwise, you're hydroplaning. You can't-
For sure.
I mean, it's just, and we're going to be at this time of year where as the temperatures gradually fall and we start getting that rain one day and maybe some mix at night, and the conditions can vary greatly. And if you're out in the country, sometimes it's hard to see things like black ice.
And prepare ahead of time. Leave that a little bit earlier. Everybody thinks that they run a little late by driving a little faster. They're going to get there a little quicker. If you take a 60-mile trip and drive, 50 miles over the speed limit to get there quicker, you look how much time you're going to save. It's a little bit of time, like a minute.
A big danger this time of year because of the change in temperatures is fog. We get a lot of fog, and sometimes it's very dense fog, and some of the worst accidents in the history of the state have been those collisions where one car hits another one, train collision.
Chain reactions.
Chain reaction. When it's that foggy, you might want to reconsider.
I guess how important is it to get there? Is it something, do you need to get to your doctor, or or is this just something that you're doing for more of a recreational purpose? Those are the questions that people have to ask and decide what is right, and not just for fog, but for winter driving, winter, any trips that you take in the winter. We always get a kick out of it at the Sheriff's Department. Like, people will call us up and ask how the roads are in Minneapolis, which we're not really sure. The Weather Channel maybe, or check, or there's some other resources. You can go on the internet certainly and find those type of things. But people, sometimes it's hard to dissuade. I guess what I'm leading up to is sometimes it's hard to dissuade people from doing their recreational trips, and that's okay. But you have to ask yourself: is getting there, by speeding or driving through terrible weather or going through a snowstorm, is that worth it? And I think if you think about it a little bit, sometimes the answer is maybe waiting a day isn't a bad thing.
No, and most employers will understand if you have to travel way out of town to get to a business or a place of business. If you call and say it's really, I can't see across my street. Most employers will say, "Hey, when it clears out, get on the road." They don't want to see their employees injured or killed.
No, I can't think of a company that doesn't. I can't think of a company that wouldn't value the safety of their folks working for them. I think that's probably a thread that runs through all of them. And good advice. It's good advice. It's something that people should consider. But I know that people have so many people have such a work ethic that they want to get there.
I know.
And you among them.
I know. He's looking at me. He knows me too well. By the way, I heard from Rick Bacoka about his place. How about yours and Missy's place in Florida?
We turned out pretty good. We have like a Rubbermaid storage shed that's maybe like 4 feet by 4 feet attached to the back of our house. That got racked a little bit, and the doors were blown off of it. But other than that, we didn't have any damage to our house in Florida. We didn't have any screen damage. Nothing happened to the windows or to the property. Got a ton of rain though, and I know some of our neighbors down there. A lot of tree damage to some of our neighbors. There were big piles of palm fronds in different areas of where our house is down there. And but no, we came through it pretty good. We visited with some of our neighbors that weathered the storm, and it was apparently really, really scary.
Oh, yeah.
They were talking about it, and they didn't, but they had nowhere else to go, and they didn't have any of the other resources that were available to them. So. But knock on wood, all was well there. I'm glad to hear that Rick's place is good, too. I think he had some work to do on his,
he had some work, and he helped out some neighbors and the like. It's homecoming weekend. Lincoln and Assumption, and I guess maybe this would be a good time to advise parents and everybody else. Homecoming is a great, fun time. We don't want it to be a tragic one.
Absolutely. In terms of after parties or get-togethers that might happen, monitor what your children are doing, be a part of their lives, know who they're hanging out with, what they're doing, what their plans are, where they're going to be, what time they're going to be there, and be a responsible parent. Sometimes it's not shiny to be sometimes it's not shiny, and there's a temptation to be sort of the cool parent that we see in movies, but it's not worth it in the long run.
You also kind of remember, I don't mean to be it in a sarcastic way, but as a parent, your children need you as a parent. They don't need you as a friend. They have plenty of friends, so you need to be a parent through all this stuff. Even the participants at these events, you want it to be a memorable thing, and you don't want that memorable thing to be in a negative way. You want something you can talk about 20 years down the line, what a good time you have, what a memorable event, not what tragedy happened on that day.
Yeah.
Carl, do you remember your homecoming?
Oh, yeah. I remember some homecoming. Yeah. I can remember some. Oh, yeah. It was fun. Mm-hmm. It was fun. Mm-hmm. Went with some buddies to the ball game and stuff like that, and then went home. Essentially, I was pretty boring when I was, especially in my senior year. I was busy getting ready for college.
Okay.
I had my plans. I was pretty well zoned in.
You're focused.
I was focused. And that's the way I've always been. When I get started on something, if you saw me at 5 o'clock in the morning when I come in here, turn on the lights and stuff. First thing I do, turn on the coffee, get to my computer, open up my computer, get to work, and it's just like probably someone would go, "Why don't you just catch your breath?" Mm-hmm. But that's the way I work. That's the way I like to work. Any final thoughts? Fall colors. Tourism season, people be cruising to check out the fall colors and the like. I guess maybe be a little bit more aware that sometimes traffic may be at a bit more leisurely pace because of it might be a visitor or what.
I totally agree. Be aware that the car in front of you might be someone that is enjoying the colors, and people that are enjoying the colors, be cognizant of the folks that are around you, so you don't have a half-mile long string of cars driving behind you as you're enjoying the different colors.
Yeah, because Cranberry Highway is listed on the Wisconsin Travel website as one of the great rides of the fall.
Mm-hmm. Today is kind of a special day also.
Okay, go ahead.
Carl, a great friend of mine and one of my earliest supporters, Gary Allwarden, turned 78 years old today. And I had the opportunity, Gary's a resident right now at the Bethel Center, and I had the opportunity to visit with him on the phone for quite a while this morning about his birthday and some of the things that he has done in his life. He's been just a tremendous president of the village of Port Edwards. Really the kind of the standard which all others will be judged against. And he was also on the Wood County Board for many years and was on the Public Safety Committee meeting and on our oversight committee of the Sheriff's Department. He turned 78 years old today, and is like I mentioned, is up at the Bethel Center now. If anyone that would know Gary would have the opportunity to, I know he'd probably love it if you gave a quick call up there and said happy birthday to him. Here's a man that has done so much for me personally. He when I first put my name in for running for being sheriff, for being appointed sheriff, wrote a letter to the governor for me immediately to try to help me get the appointment. Helped me throughout my career. Was on like I mentioned on our committee. Did just a great job. Helped transform law enforcement in Wood County. And was just a huge part of it. And so if anyone out there listening know Gary, give him a holler today. I think maybe the folks up at Bethel might get mad if we have like 100 phone calls, but they'll get over it.
Hey, I'll send our WFHR's wishes, Gary, for a happy birthday. Enjoy the day. Gentlemen, a very interesting program as always, and Randy and Sheriff, thank you both for being here, and we also thank Wisconsin Rapids Community Media for being here as well, and we'll do it again next month.
Thanks so much for having us.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Take care. And that's going to do it for this edition of the Morning Magazine on AM 1320 and WFHR.com. As always, it's been brought to you by Comfort Air.